So what were they really afraid of with Trump? They were afraid he wouldn't do this. That's what they were afraid of. They were afraid he wouldn't go along with them because he didn't come up in the Republican farm team. He didn't come up in the organization. He didn't have groomers, Trump. Trump didn't have donors for his whole life like everybody else. He was a donor. So he didn't owe favors like everybody else. They couldn't control him like they could control everybody. So what they did was they concocted Russiagate, red baited him for 4 straight years, and impeached him twice because he didn't have his mind right. So if you were the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans. That's what this means. If you're pro-war, you vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats.
So that was comedian Jimmy Dore telling his audience that Republicans, not so bad. Maybe you should have voted for Trump, if you're against war. Now, look, I'm going to disagree. I've had disagreements with Jimmy Dore, and, I've tried to stay out of it, with different hosts fighting each other, and I generally try to stay away from the drama. But, if you're telling people to vote for Republicans because they're anti-war, well, that's nonsense. I disagree. It's the same Republican Party under Trump that, while in the majority, continuously voted to increase the military budget. You've got videos of Donald Trump saying, "I'm the most militaristic person you could imagine. I know more than the generals. I know the military. We need to rebuild our military and get even more people, even more money into the military." Okay, disagree. So now look, the numbers. As of 2019, Donald Trump had grown the defense budget by over $133 billion over Obama's defense budget. Now, that said, look, I'm not saying that the Democrats also haven't increased the defense budget. Yes, they have. Biden has increased the defense budget. And so if you want to be critical of the Democrats for that and say, hey, look, the Democrats increasing the defense budget, here we go. That's fair criticism because it's factual. It's factual. Now, and look, here's the thing about the United States and both political parties. They are both captured by the military-industrial complex. We know this. We know that there is a very weak anti-war movement in the parties. There are very, very few on both sides that are talking about anti-war, and very, very few of those that actually mean it. And look, Jimmy gives credit to Marjorie Taylor Greene for calling out the $40 billion to Ukraine. The thing about that is she is not anti-war. She's literally invested in Lockheed Martin stocks. So she's making money off the war. Seems a bit hypocritical here to be calling it out and also making money off of it. Okay? And so, look, I don't quite understand why Jimmy is now saying, you know what? It'd be better to just vote for Republicans if you're anti-war. No, if Jimmy, if you believe in your third party, right, then you would have told people, don't vote for either of them, then vote for your third party. Then at least that would be consistent and be credible. Now you're just saying, fuck it, vote MAGA. It would have been better. No, it wouldn't have. And again, I'm going to have more evidence of that, later on. But first, let me show you another video here of Jimmy explaining his new position.
That's all that. That's Republican, right? So what has happened here, in case no one's noticing, the parties have flipped when it comes to foreign policy. The Republicans used to be crazy war hawks, and you associate war hawkery with a right-wing position. Now the Democrats are the right-wingers, and the Republicans are the anti-war lefties. So that's all that. That's Republican right-wing red-baiting bullshit.
Wait, hold on here. Republicans aren't anti-war. Neither party is anti-war. Again, and let me point to Donald Trump dropping the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan. In fact, when you look at not just the amount of strikes that had happened in Afghanistan and in Syria and in other places, look at how many civilians died under Trump. According to a study from the Cost of War Project at Brown University, the civilian death toll in Afghanistan skyrocketed under Trump. As Trump relaxed military authorization rules for airstrikes back in 2017, the number of civilians killed by international airstrikes increased 330% from 2016. But we're anti-war. We're anti-imperialism. What? In Trump's first year of office, the administration eased restrictions for drone strikes, removing the limitation that allowed strikes on high-ranking militants and removed the previous vetting processes for drone strikes. Now, I had talked about and criticized Obama for taking the drone program under George W. Bush and expanding it to where you had an increase in civilian casualties. Donald Trump takes over and he looks at the drone program and says, no, let's expand it. Let's do more civilian death. Let's have more civilian casualties. Let's take the gloves off the military. Does that sound anti-war to you? The U.S. also relaxed a restriction on rules of engagement so that it no longer had to be in direct contact with enemy forces in order to conduct airstrikes, leading again to more civilian casualties. In Yemen, in 2017, the drone strikes there increased by a total of 300% from the previous year, according to data compiled by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. The number of drone strikes in Somalia increased significantly under Trump. Somalia, which he pointed out, we're going back in. I don't agree. I don't think we should have went back in. And I disagree with the Biden administration. If you want to call that out, that's totally fair. And I agree with calling it out. But you can't say that Trump was better on this issue. According to estimates provided by a report from Air Wars, at least 86 civilians in Yemen were killed and raids carried out in Yemen under Trump's watch. Most of these killings occurred in 2017 and 2018 in the context of U.S. military operations in Yemen. These 2 years were some of the most active in terms of strikes and the deadliest for civilians. And in 2019, Trump had the ability to take our forces out of Yemen, our support from Yemen, from the Saudi attacks on Yemen, to end our involvement. Trump vetoed that. Congress said, okay, we don't want to be involved in Yemen anymore. Trump did his second presidential veto. That same year, Trump also issued an executive order rolling back an Obama-era measure mandating public disclosure of estimated civilian death toll from operations in areas like Yemen that are deemed active war zones. So basically, he's like, I want to hide the amount of civilian deaths that we are causing in these Middle Eastern areas. Trump also nearly got us into a war with Iran by assassinating Iranian General Soleimani, and then ripped up the Iran deal before that, making it more likely that we would possibly get into a conflict with Iran. None of that feels anti-war to me. None of that feels anti-war. Now look, if you want to point out that foreign policy under the Democrats has been terrible, I'm all for it, 100%, and I agree. I also agree that it has not been great under Joe Biden. Now, I have given him credit where he pulled out of Afghanistan. He followed through with the Trump plan, and I gave Trump credit for that too. Fair is fair, and we do fairness on this show. We talk about what is factual, what is correct. I can also point out that, yes, Donald Trump did not start any wars. Joe Biden hasn't either. What happened with Trump is that he inherited these conflicts, and guess what? He decided to make these conflicts, instead of ending them, made them more brutal and killed more civilians. Is that anti-war? Is that anti-war? And by the way, he also appointed to his administration two of the most ghoulish people you could imagine: Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, whom Trump, of course, later fired, but not because he was, too pro-war. He didn't like the mustache. So this is the thing. You actually had ghouls in the Trump administration preventing him from launching nukes at other countries. Is that an anti-war person? All the different stories we talked about on Trump. All the different stories. Oh, but they're fake news. Fake news, fake news, fake news. Now, again, if you want to point out Biden voted for the Iraq war, this is fact. This is factual information. 100%. And again, he's been criticized, and I will continue to criticize him for that disastrous vote. But you go back to Trump, where he was kind of against the war, but then for the war, but then against the war. Bolton wanted to invade Venezuela. Yes, and that's another thing. You cannot say that Trump was anti-war, that the Republicans would have been a better anti-war option. No, simply not factual. Again, what we have is, unfortunately, a lack of an anti-war party. I concede that we do a hell of a lot of imperialism, and that's bad. We should all be against it, of course. And we should have a strong anti-war movement. But an anti-war movement that is strong, it shouldn't be based on lies. Shouldn't be based on false information. You have to be factual. You have to talk about both sides. And by the way, talking about going back to Biden and drone strikes. Well, Biden is now in control of the drone program, and what has he done? Nothing. Nothing about that. He chose Avril Haines to lead the U.S. intelligence agencies. Haines was one of the architects of Obama's drone policy. Joe Biden has also forgotten to do anything about Yemen. So he's had a chance to pull U.S. involvement from Yemen. He hasn't done that. And so all of that is fair criticism. But if you're only going after one side and trying to promote the other side as, oh no, these guys, they're totally anti-war because the party's flipped. And that is not factual, Jimmy. That is not factual. You are misleading your audience. You're doing them a disservice. You want to be a truth teller, then tell the truth. There's plenty of blame to go around to the Democrats. But you can't just pretend that Republicans are better. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. Again, if you're going to criticize both sides for God's sakes. I said a few days ago, lefties are pretty terrible at talking about foreign policy. We should be talking about it more. We should absolutely be addressing it more. But what Jimmy is saying is, no, it's the right wing, it's the MAGA that are the lesser of two evils. And even went on to say, what are you going to do? Vote for Joe Biden or someone like Ron DeSantis, who's starting to look more appealing to him. That's not the case. Again, the MAGA is not the lesser of two evils. I think there gets to be a point when you have gone so far in your hatred of the Democrats, in your anger at the Democrats, that you start to look at the other side and think, well, they hate the same people that I hate. Maybe I'm on their side instead. I feel like that's what he's doing. And it's unfortunate to see. Not good at all. Democrats, yes, maybe weak and feckless, and generally pretty terrible, especially when it comes to foreign policy. But you look at Republicans and their record, monstrous. The proof is in the numbers. The proof is in what they do.